Shalom. Tonight begins the holiday of Tu B'Shavat. In the Jewish calendar, days begin at night. Does anybody know why? Anybody? Why are they? Good guess. No. She's got it, yes. In Genesis, it says it was evening and morning of first day. So in the Jewish calendar, days begin at night. So tonight at sundown, we'll begin Tu B'Shavat. Tu B'Shavat just simply means the 15th of the month of Shavat. We're in the Jewish month of Shavat. We don't have January, February, March. We have these other weird names for months. But it is a lunar calendar, and so it shifts as well. So Shavat usually falls around January to February, just depends on the year. It is the new year of trees. This comes from a commandment in the Torah, which says that we have to tithe the produce of our trees. In Leviticus chapter 19, it says, when you come into the land and plant any tree for food, you shall regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years it shall be forbidden to you. It shall not be eaten. In the 4th year, all of its fruit shall be holy, a praise to the Lord. And in the 5th year, you may finally eat its fruit, so that it may yield more richly for you. I am the Lord your God. So for these first 3 years, it cannot be eaten at all. It's just allowed to grow on the tree, for the tree to mature. And then in that 4th year, the produce was supposed to be taken to the temple in Jerusalem for worship and a special communal meal with that fruit of that tree. And then after the 5th year, you can partake, you could sell it, eat it, whatever, but you do have to tithe from it every year. So the Torah says that we have to do this, but why this particular date of Tu B'Shavat? Well, to understand Jewish law, you have to think of the Torah as like the U.S. Constitution. Maybe a charged statement to say in these day and times. Didn't realize that till just now. But the Constitution states these general principles, right? And people argue about what they mean. And that's exactly what you have in rabbinic law. The rabbis are arguing about how does this play out in real life. And so rabbinic law, the Talmud, is like U.S. case law, attempting to apply it. So the question becomes, how do you calculate the age of a tree if one person plants it in June and maybe another one plants it in August or whatever the case may be? So the rabbis chose the 15th of the month of Shavat because this is the beginning of spring in Israel. And Israel doesn't normally get much snow, but they do get rain. It's a rainy season from the fall until about this time of the year. And when the rains are done, the sap begins to flow in the trees again. They begin to blossom, and it's a new year for the trees. So that's why they chose this date. This is a minor holiday. In modern times, it's become a Jewish Earth Day. There's lots of activities about saving the planet, living responsibly and sustainably, planting trees or gardens, eating of new fruits of the season is a traditional thing to do as well. The Jewish mystics, however, applied a spiritual meaning, and that's what I'd like to focus on today. One form of Jewish mysticism that you may have heard of is called Kabbalah, which just means receiving. It arose in medieval Judaism, time of the medieval Middle Ages, And Kabbalah teaches that holiness is hidden within the world, and it's within us as well, and that our actions help to uncover it. During creation, God intentionally, according to Kabbalah, let bits of his radiance get trapped into klipot. Klipot is a Hebrew word that means shell. I was going to bring a walnut, but then I was worried about people with nut allergies. And how did a Jew get an Easter egg? Well, I went to my neighbor and got an Easter egg. So the idea in Kabbalah is that there's these bits of God's radiance that are hidden in the world, and they're trapped in there, and it's our duty to release those sparks of holiness back into the world. When we do a good deed, when we help somebody out, when we pray, it breaks open these shells and releases that radiance. Isn't that like a beautiful idea? What's that, a walnut? Better than a walnut? This is why, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but you'll see like Orthodox Jews, especially like in New York City, Detroit it happens as well. Orthodox Jews will go around and ask people, are you Jewish? And if they say yes, they'll try to get them to say a prayer. This actually happened to me 2 summers ago, I think now. My wife and I were driving up north to a family reunion, and we stopped at a what do you call it, rest area, and used the facilities. And I stepped out, I'm waiting for my wife, and here comes a guy in the black coat, black hat, black pants, white shirt, the traditional Orthodox look. And he's got a bag under his arm. And I saw him, and he saw me, and I pointed at my hat. My hat is a hat I had made that says Jewish Lives Matter. I made this after the October 7th attack in Israel, that horrific attack where so many people were killed. And he instantly came over and he says, you won't believe this. I was getting out of the car and something told me that I should grab my tefillin. Now, tefillin are the leather straps that a Jew puts on their arm and on their head when they pray. And he says, have you laid tefillin today? And I said, well, actually, no. And he goes, great. And so we laid tefillin together. And so we're standing there in the rest area. We're wrapping the leather straps on, and then I just said a short prayer and everything. But the motivation behind that is that we released a spark of holiness when that happened. If you think about it, this goes along with the concept of that when God created the universe, he created something that was not him, something that was not God, and then now he wants to infuse his presence in it. And this is the story of what we see in the Torah, as God is permeating his creation. He starts with Israel, he extends it to the nations of the world through Messiah Yeshua, and ultimately at the end of time, all of these shells will be broken open, and he will be completely present with his creation. So this makes us partners with God in the unfolding of creation. We release these bits of holiness. We're really releasing bits of him, so to speak, revealing him, bringing him more and more present in the universe. But we also have to recognize, or I encourage us to recognize, that we can build inner shells inside of us that blocks that holiness. Jewish mystics say that the Jewish soul has 5 parts, and the bottommost part, the most central part of our very being, is called yechidah, which means oneness. And it's the part of the soul that is in communion with God. It's where, if we're connected to this yechidah, this bottommost essence of who we are, we hear God's voice most clearly. So instead of thinking of God calling down from the heavens, he's really calling from the depths of who we are. You know, Christian mystics will call this the true self. So really, I think it's the same concept as this as well. We often cannot hear God's voice because we have wrapped that true self with layers upon layers. I should have had nested Russian dolls or something. But layers and layers of these klipot, these shells that cover it up and block it. A Christian teacher by the name of Thomas Keating says that I'm appropriating what he said and then putting it into my idiom. Basically, we build these shells with what Keating called emotional programs for happiness. That it's how we learn to behave in order to feel safe, loved, have control in our lives, these kinds of things. But it's disordered because we're attempting to do this of our own power and not with God, and it often leads to the building of these shells. We say things like, if I do good things, then I'll feel worthy. This is like a shell of responsibility. So that can look good on the outside, right? Boy, Delith is such a responsible, dutiful person. But it can be coming from a disordered place. Or we could say to ourselves, I wasn't meaning Delith in particular. If I do good, I already said that one. If I don't fight back, then I'll be safe. So you could come across as a very cooperative person, but maybe that's coming from a disordered place. If I stay useful, then I won't be abandoned. If I have everything figured out, I won't be helpless. Right? And maybe one that's maybe a trap for many of us. If I stay in a spiritually elevated state all the time, then I won't be hurt. And again, this can be looking really good, right? Delith could look really holy. So how do we break apart these shells? Well, I'm going to give you a few ideas. First of all, I believe that our minds and our souls are so and this comes from personal experience the last several years for me. Our minds and souls are so interwoven that to pursue holiness and not deal with your mental states, I think, is not helpful, right? I think that anybody who is serious about the spiritual life should consider therapy at some point in time. I have found it immensely helpful to be able to focus on the psychological part because it really is interwoven with the spiritual part. We're reading a book right now in a book group that I lead by Rabbi Shai Held. It's called Judaism is About Love. It's a fantastic book. And he says in there, knowing our wounds and working to ease them is a fundamental requirement of the spiritual life, and it's a moral responsibility. Go get the book. It's very readable. He does use some big words, but it's very readable. Pardon me? My wife complains about that. What does that word mean? But It's a fantastic book. Number 2, and this really comes out of Buddhist teachings, which I also just think, I jokingly tell people, I don't know if I've ever told you this, guys, before, but I say I'm the first Messianic Jubu. Jubu is a Jewish Buddhist. There's also Hindu Jews. And my youngest daughter is a cashew, a Catholic Jew. She married an Italian Catholic guy. But there's just so much wisdom in Buddhism. So here's number 2. Naming the shell as you see it without identifying with it. Instead of saying, I am angry, say, oh, I see anger as present in me. Instead of saying, I'm afraid, you say, I'm experiencing fear right now. It's really a way for us to become detached from these things and not take it on as our identity. Because when we do that, it's creating a shell, a klipa, and it's blocking us from our very inner essence. Another book that I've been recently reading, he likens it to flying a kite, right? And he says, you can feel the tug of the wind on the kite, but you don't have to let it jerk you away and go fly it away with the kite, right? You're in control of it. You could just observe it and see that it's happening. Do not romanticize suffering. We can build our egos by justifying suffering or explaining it away. We could say things like, well, everything happens for a reason. Or people who haven't suffered like me don't really get it. This always happens to me. It's just my lot in life. I deserve my anger for what's happened to me. Right? And finally, I got 2 more. The next one I think is crucial is a prayer of openness, practicing prayer of openness. To open ourselves to God's agency, ask Him to reveal to us what is disordered in us that we are blind to. In Psalm 139, it says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any hurtful way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. And then finally, a great way to destroy shells, to combat that building up of the ego, is to allow yourself to receive love. Many of us struggle with this because of our egos. If we don't just receive this love, then it avoids us being vulnerable. But receiving love from others, care and concern, dismantles this image of self-sufficiency. The ego thrives on self-sufficiency, but it dissolves when love is received without us needing to be in control. All too often, we build klipot, these shells that cover up our soul, because we try to be safe and happy without God's agency. Tu B'Shavat reminds us that growth is slow and fruit takes time. May we recognize the voices of fear and control for what they are. May we resist the temptation to build our identities around our wounds. May we do the hard work of shattering the shells that keep us from our truest selves and from God. And in doing so, we will become not just flourishing trees, but trees of life that provide shelter and nourishment to all around us. Thank you.